Thanks for watching Afternoon Live. If you want to raise kids with a healthy relationship with food, our next guest says, give them candy. Here to explain why we welcome nutrition therapist and the author of Nurture, How to Heal Your Relationship with Food, Body, and Self, Heidi Schauster. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi, thanks for having me, Hannah.
Tell me about what inspired you to write this book and help us learn how to support our kids having healthy relationships with food.
Well, I very much was passionate about this topic because I've been in the eating disorders field for almost 30 years. And then prior to that, I had struggled with my own eating disorder. I'm also a parent of two young adult women. So I have well, there they are. I have lots of reasons to to care about this topic.
Yeah, beautiful young women, by the way, your daughters. And I know that you've overcome a lot with your own relationship with food. And how did your perspective change, if it did at all, once you had your daughters?
My perspective actually towards parents really changed. I've been already practicing in the eating disorders field. And I think as a parent, I just became just much more compassionate around just how hard it is to navigate our culture um, as a parent, and trying to sort of bring up kids to have a neutral and healthy relationship with food and with their own bodies. It's not easy to do in this culture. So I think I
Absolutely.
appreciated it even more as a parent.
Yeah, we're all doing our best all the time and making mistakes and learning along the way. So tell me about this
Absolutely.
idea of letting kids eat candy. How do we find a healthy balance with all these things?
Yeah, I heard your introduction, and I think what I'm saying is not like forced candy on your kids, of
Right.
course, but that we need to be more neutral and balanced around food, and that often when we make something restrictive, when we take something out of our kids' diets, it just increases the charge of that food. And I saw that certainly with my own children, that when they had friends come over who were in sugar-free households, they were the ones who were going for the leftover dusty Halloween candy that my kids had sort of ignored. So in general, obviously families have to navigate this differently based on their own kids' temperaments, but for the most part, having a more neutral and less restrictive attitude about foods and food groups works better for allowing kids some self-regulation, which ultimately makes them a healthy eater.
Yeah,
And
and what about sweets and those type of junk food or candy as a reward? I've heard that we should start moving away from that, which I think a lot of us grew up with.
absolutely, I would not want that to be a reward because we don't want to give those foods more charge than they need to. They're pleasurable foods and they should be enjoyed and eaten occasionally. But if they get attached to, if they're used for potty training and they
Mm-hmm.
get attached to like, oh, these foods are special, then in some ways it makes them even more like again, it's that word charged. And then if our culture says, well, you shouldn't eat so much sugar, watch that, it just gets really confusing for kids. So again, my goal is to create more neutrality around food so that food can be chosen for much more internal reasons than those sort of external reasons, if that makes sense.
Yeah, did you have any strategies that worked for you and your family, maybe when your girls were younger, of taking some of that charge out of those unhealthy foods and making a more neutral base for them?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't stock the cabinets full of them, but I did have a balance of all different kinds of foods in my house, which I think was really important as a baseline. Also, I found that um, like if there was a challenge with a particular type of food at any point, having some gentle, regular limits that the whole family could follow around it. So, for example, you wouldn't, send a child into a candy store and say, eat everything. You would say, here's $2, or here's a little bag, and you can fill this up with whatever you like. So it's about teaching them some gentle limits around food that I think works for folks that maybe have already some charge around certain foods.
Yeah, that's a great kind of easy to approach way to look at it. What about if you've got young kids, teens, tweens, and you're already seeing them maybe concerned about their own body image? Are there certain things that we can help them along the way and make a more positive environment for them?
Yeah, I think ultimately, encouraging kids to really think about themselves as a whole person. Obviously, we look at our children as whole people, our teens as whole people, but it's such a image-driven time of life. So the more that we encourage that whole sense in our kids, the better. And I think, like in general, if you do see your kids struggling with their body image or struggling with food, it's okay to express your concern. And it may even help them in the end to not develop a more serious problem to hear that people are concerned, that you want them to be taking good care of themselves and really relating to themselves in a more kind way. And then obviously, if the problem persists, there is professional help available as well
For
for
sure. Opening the
discouragement.
conversation can be the hardest part, but the most helpful thing a lot of the time. Thank you so much for joining us today. It was great talking with you.
Thanks so much for having me, Hannah. I appreciate it.
Of course, the book again is Nurture, and we'll have more information on our website at katu.com. We'll be right back with more Afternoon Live right after this.